Hey TB, back in March of 2015, I woke up around 3 a.m. for no reason at all. Now normally if I wake up at that hour it's to get water or maybe go to the bathroom, but I didn't need either. At that time I was living in Southern California, near Camp Pendleton. My neighborhood sat on the edge of an open wilderness. Past the last row of houses, there was nothing but miles of empty land. I've always been interested in the supernatural, but I don't think I ever truly believed in it until that night. Before going to bed, I'd open my window to let the hot air out. Curtains wide and blinds all the way up. My bed was right next to it. So when I woke up, the first thing I did was glance outside. That's when I saw what I thought was a person standing at the crosswalk across the street. Strange because we never had runners or early morning walkers until about 5 a.m. Curious, I sat up for a better look. And what I saw then is burned into my memory. Whatever it was standing upright, but its legs were bent unnaturally. White fur covered most of its body, though patches of bare skin showed through. Its back was hunched, and its face looked like some kind of dog. If it had straightened up to its full height, it would have been 7, maybe even 8 feet tall. I tried to tell myself that I was just imagining things, but for some reason I couldn't move. I was frozen in place just staring at it. The ears and nose looked just like a dog's, or maybe a wolf or a coyote, but coyotes were rare in the neighborhood. Then it turned its head towards me. It stood directly under a streetlight, so I could see it clearly. Its eyes were pitch black, but they still somehow caught the light shining in a way that made it feel like they were looking straight into my soul. Well, that was enough for me. I slammed the window shut and pulled down the blinds, closed the curtains, and dove under the covers. I didn't sleep again that night. Now fast forward to June of 2017. I woke up again late one night because I was hungry. I went downstairs and grabbed some food and sat at the kitchen table. My back was next to the window, a window about 6 feet off the ground that my mom had accidentally left open some 10 inches. The screen had been torn out some months before, and we hadn't gotten around to replacing it yet. I had earbuds in, watching something on my phone, when I still heard a noise. So I paused the video and listened. And that's when I heard it. Heavy, ragged breathing. Not the kind of breathing you'd ever hear from a person. This was rough, almost animalistic, and it was coming from directly behind me, right outside that open window. Every hair on the back of my neck stood up, and I had goosebumps. I couldn't bring myself to turn around. This breathing went on for nearly 2 minutes, and then I heard slow, heavy footsteps walking away. I waited for another count of 10 before I got up to shut and lock the window, close the curtains, and run upstairs to my room. After my first encounter back in 2015, I told my parents the next morning. I was only 16 at the time, and they laughed it off, said I'd probably just seen a coyote. After the second encounter, I told them again, but they just chalked it up to me being tired and maybe hearing things. So my question is, has anyone else out there experienced something like this? Was it a coyote? Was I hallucinating, or was it something else? This has been bothering me for years, and I finally had to get this off my chest. Thanks. Signed, Tristan. Dear Biker, one Saturday night about 3 years ago, my teenage daughter was bored, so I suggested that we head out of town, up on a hill and do some sky watching. We live in Beckley, West Virginia, so it's a short drive to get deep into the boonies. I was thinking maybe we'd spot a satellite or two. We headed up at this little field off a side road, a spot I'd been to on a few other occasions. Well, it didn't take long for her to spot something moving up there. She thought it might be a satellite until she asked, "Do they zigzag and go in circles?" I told her no. Satellites move in a steady arc across the sky, following their orbit. Well, her eyesight's a lot better than mine, so I got out my night vision goggles, and through them, I could see it too. It was zigzagging, looping, even reversing direction. I sat fascinated. You see, sky watching is a bit of a hobby of mine, but she got bored after a while and said she was ready to go. Since sometimes I do a bit of Bigfooting, I've never seen one, but I've always wanted to, I decided to go ahead and scan the tree line with my binoculars before we left. And that's when I noticed the eye shine. "Jessie, look," I said as I handed her the night vision goggles. She peered through them and said, "Yeah, I can see its ears." Well, that confused me. Bigfoot isn't exactly known for having prominent ears. That's when she said, "I'm scared. I don't like it. I want to get in the truck, and you should too." But I was far too excited. After all this time, maybe I was finally going to catch something. I told her, "Why don't you keep looking? Maybe you'll see it run away." That was my brilliant strategy. But she wanted no part of it, and she ran straight to the truck. I kept scanning, walking toward where I'd seen the eyes, closing the distance to about 30 yards, and that's when I finally understood what she meant. 2 ears were sticking straight up from the top of this thing's head like a German shepherd's. My heart suddenly jumped into my throat, and I realized I'd been shining my old laser beam right at it, and it had its eyes shut. I dropped the beam from its face, and when I did, 2 yellow eyes slowly opened. A chill instantly ran down my spine. I started stumbling backwards, still looking through the binoculars, not wanting to lose track of this thing. But when I finally had to look away and then tried to find it again, it was gone. Well, that's the moment I panicked and I bolted for the truck. When I told her I finally saw the ears, she said, "I tried to tell you. It was crazy to stay out there." She was almost borderline disrespectful in that moment, but I figured I had it coming. We sped out of there, and I haven't been back to that spot after dark ever since. I've been wanting to share this with you because, well, even though I've done my share of amateur squatching, what started as a simple night of looking for satellites with my daughter turned into the most intense experience I've ever had. I still don't know what we saw out there, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't a Bigfoot, and I have no idea if it was connected to that strange aerial phenomenon or just a coincidence. Thanks for reading this. Signed, Rob. Dear Tattooed Biker, I had a very strange experience about 12 years ago at Starved Rock State Park in Illinois. I was visiting my girlfriend in Chicago at the time. On a calm, sunny winter day, we decided to hike Starved Rock. Now, I'm an avid hiker and was on leave from Iraq, eager to enjoy some fresh air. We hiked for several hours, and late in the afternoon, about half a mile from the parking lot, we entered an area where tree branches were broken and pulled over the trail, mostly high up, about 8 feet or more. Having lived in Washington before Iraq, I knew a bit about Sasquatch territory. I told my girlfriend it looked like a Squatch area, given the broken branches so up high. And that's when things started to get even stranger. Suddenly, I felt like someone was staring at me. Much stronger than just a vague feeling, like when you know someone in a crowded room is focused on you. I looked around, but didn't see anyone. The forest was visible for hundreds of feet in every direction. A group of hikers were several hundred feet behind us, but they weren't looking our way. As we passed through the squatch area, the feeling shifted to someone close behind me, following us. I kept looking back over my shoulder, twice a minute at least, but there was only that group far behind us. I told my girlfriend to move ahead about 20 feet. I had a strong sense that something was right behind us. Then, about 30 seconds after my last look back, I saw her. A woman walking towards me, fast. But there was something very off about her speed. She wasn't running, but she was closing on me like she was. It was almost like she was on one of those moving walkways at an airport. She was only about 15 or 20 feet behind me. I was alarmed and I glared at her. She stopped when our eyes met. We stared at each other, neither of us moving. Her head was cocked slightly back and to the left, and she looked at me from the corner of her eyes like she had been caught doing something. She looked completely normal, like a local Chicago woman, late 50s, wearing a bright red winter coat, gloves, slacks, the whole 9 yards. But a few things stood out. First, there was absolutely no sound, no footsteps, no rustling, nothing that should have made me turn around, just that strong feeling. And at the speed she was moving, she'd have had to have been running hard, but I hadn't heard anything. She wasn't breathing hard, her mouth was closed, and her gait was walking, not running. Second, her features were oddly indistinct. No marks, no shadows, no variation at all in skin tone or clothing. As a former Army investigator, I'm trained to notice details, but her bright red coat was pristine, uniform in color with no shading, even in the low sun. We stared at one another for 5 to 10 seconds, and when I felt I'd made my point, I turned and kept walking. My girlfriend hadn't noticed anything amiss and was still ahead. After a few steps, I realized there was no way she could have come from that group. In the short time since I'd last looked back, there was simply nowhere else she could have come from. Visibility was hundreds of feet all around. Realizing this, I quickly spun back around and she was gone. Simply vanished. I checked the group behind us. No one wore a red coat or was looking our way. There was no one else around at all. No sounds other than my own footsteps. From there, it took us about 10 minutes to reach the car. I never felt watched or followed on the rest of the walk. Now, I've never returned to Starved Rock State Park, and I don't have any intention of going back. The entire thing was just so bizarre, I never knew how to tell anyone, so I didn't. My mental state at the time was fine. I had a 20-year STEM career following my Army service and was working on a DoD IT contract in Iraq at the time. I was well rested, relaxed on vacation with my girlfriend, and there weren't any drugs or alcohol involved. Those are strictly prohibited in my line of work. I've carried this experience for over 12 years, unable to talk about it because it was just so exceptional and completely without explanation. It's just a relief to hear similar stories. After listening to many accounts and things from your channel, I believe I narrowly avoided by being taken by something. I don't know if it was the woman that I saw. I think maybe it was something else. That maybe something was out there that I couldn't see. Thanks for reading this. Signed, Carter. Dear TB, I've been holding on to this story for a while, but I'm finally getting around to sharing it. Sorry if it's a bit long-winded. I've camped in this particular area in eastern Nevada a few times before, usually at established campgrounds, but my current girlfriend prefers roughing it, so on this particular trip we made it a point to camp out in the middle of nowhere, where no one else was around. We do multi-day overlanding and 4x4 style camping, moving to a new spot almost every night, places where most people don't go. This brings me to the first night of our 5-day trip over the 4th of July weekend in 2019. It turned out to be one of the weirdest camping experiences I've ever had in my 30-plus years of camping. At the time, I didn't realize just how strange it was, but more on that later. Now, I'd found this spot a few miles from an organized campground a couple of years back. It's easy to find, just off a main dirt road, and it looks like it's used a lot during the hunting season. We always bring our dog, a mini Australian Shepherd. Usually, she runs around exploring, but that particular afternoon, she stayed close to us the whole time. I just figured that maybe she wasn't feeling well after the 3-hour drive. As the sun went down, we started a fire. We ate some burgers, and I was smoking a tobacco pipe while we just stared up at the stars. Around 9 p.m., things first got weird. We heard a whooping noise coming from a few hundred yards away. My first thought was maybe an elk, but I quickly told myself it wasn't quite the right sound. So I figured it must be some animal that I'd never heard before. About 10 minutes later, we heard a really loud bang. At first, I thought it was a gunshot, but I know firearms pretty well, and this wasn't it. Plus, it wasn't hunting season, and hunting is only allowed during daylight hours. The sound was more like someone hitting a tin roof or a metal sheet with a sledgehammer. Just one sharp blow about 100 yards away. Now, there weren't any structures for miles, so by this point I was definitely getting weirded out. My girlfriend was just sitting there, enjoying the fire, seemingly not worried. Meanwhile, me and the dog were on high alert. And then, just a few minutes later, I saw a white light behind my girlfriend, off in the distance. When I looked directly at it, I couldn't see anything, but out of the corner of my eye, it was there. I told her to turn and look, and when she faced the light, it disappeared. When she faced the fire, it came back. Well, we did this a few times, and then it didn't come back at all. Maybe 30 seconds to a minute total. She never saw anything, and I only saw a blurry white light with no distinct shape. At that point, I was getting ready for bed, and we crawled into the safety of our Jeep and locked ourselves in. The rest of the night and the entire 5-day trip was pretty uneventful. The next morning, the dog was in a much better mood. I walked toward where I'd seen that light, directly in my line of sight from the campfire, through the trees, about 100 yards out and about 8 feet off the ground. The ground there wasn't disturbed at all, and I had no idea what it was or why I couldn't look directly at it without my vision blurring. When we got home, I searched online to try and figure out what we had experienced. I found a video from some Bigfoot hunters who'd recorded audio of whooping sounds. And when I played it, my blood ran cold, and my girlfriend said, "That's exactly what we heard." Now, we only heard the whoops 3 or 4 times, that was it. Well, I'm always extra cautious in the woods these days, especially when my kids are with me. From what I've read, this doesn't seem like an area where people usually go missing. Anyway, that's my honest-to-God experience, and I was completely sober. I'm not the type to go looking for paranormal stuff, and I haven't ever experienced or heard anything like that before or since. And yes, I've been camping since, but I'm still trying to wrap my head around it when I think about it. Signed, Anthony.